Gabe Perreault has been called up by the New York Rangers. We tell you why they absolutely needed to do this.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1422 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, now the #1 sports podcast network. So, going to go ahead and basically just make this the Gabe Perreault show here. A monumental call-up by the New York Rangers. Obviously, he made his NHL debut toward the end of last season, but it was just a small sample size, and obviously it was at the end of just a disastrous season for the New York Rangers. But he's called back up now by this team, and not a moment too soon. Now, I do want to go ahead first and acknowledge something else that we've been talking about on Locked On New York Rangers as it pertains to Gabe Perreault. That being that, in my very humble opinion, an ideal situation with Gabe Perreault would have included him not making the Rangers out of training camp, going to the Hartford Wolfpack, playing about 20 to 25 games with the Pack, and then you call him up on an as-needed basis. We didn't quite get to 20 or 25 games, only 9 to be exact, but we got to that other part. We got to the as-needed basis part because, holy God, do the Rangers need a spark. They need some offense of some kind, some production, something to just kind of get the team going a little bit, somebody that can bring some life, bring some excitement into this lineup, particularly when this team is playing at home. And as I just mentioned a second ago, Gabe started the season with the Wolfpack, only ended up playing 9 games there, 5 goals, 5 assists, and a +7 during that time, which is obviously awesome. I mean, point per game status for Gabe Perreault, through his first 9 games in the AHL. So if nothing else, I mean, it would seem to suggest that, he's ready for this. And it's not a situation where, like, this kid has been scuffling with Hartford and now we're relying on him to fix the New York Rangers. He's obviously been excelling there. And he's been excelling with the Wolfpack while playing on their top line primarily. I mean, I haven't checked every Wolfpack lineup every game, but the line that I've been seeing most commonly for the Pack is Gabe Perreault with Yaroslav Himalash, and he actually just got sent down to make room for Gabe Perreault, made his NHL debut a couple of games ago and played 2 games with the Rangers. But Himalash, in his career in the AHL, 36 points in 87 games. So not exactly like stellar offensive production. That's one of Gabe Perreault's 2 line mates with the Wolfpack. And the other is Justin Dowling, who is now 35 years old and has 26 points in 152 career NHL games. So nothing against either player, and obviously those two are at very different parts in their career, but neither one of them are going to get confused with, offensive juggernauts. And yet Gabe Perreault and that line, I mean, give them credit where it's due. They've obviously been producing thus far for the Hartford Wolfpack, and we hope that obviously continues with the New York Rangers as well now that Gabe has been promoted. But as far as why go back now? Like what makes me feel like, okay, well, this had to happen, even though I've been saying 20 or 25 games for Gabe Perreault? Well, have you seen the Rangers lately? I'm assuming the answer is yes, because most people that tune in here, you guys are diehard fans and you catch every game or just about every single game. And, that's awesome. But you guys are just as well aware as I am of the fact that this team is offensively challenged. There we go. Particularly at home, where they have been shut out 5 times in 7 games to start the season. This was the only choice. This team, again, badly in need of an offensive spark. And honestly, if you're looking for an offensive spark and you want to get it from the AHL, Gabe is basically your only choice. I mean, there's a couple other names we could throw out there. You could call it Brennan Hoffman, but they already tried that. And he had that bad shift against Calgary, then was a healthy scratch for 3 straight games, then sent back down. They've tried it with Hoffman in the past. I believe right now he stands at 2 points in 26 career NHL games. The Rangers were talking about trading him earlier in the season. Probably didn't get an offer that they liked for fairly obvious reasons. So I don't think Hoffman is the solution right now. Brett Berard, I mean, you could make a case for Berard for sure. He came up with the Rangers last year, and I thought had a pretty solid showing in what turned out to be, his rookie season during a year where everything else is going badly for the Rangers. You could definitely make a case for Berard. The one knock against Berard, though, is that, he is off to a little bit of a slow start offensively with the Pack this season. And for sure, I don't think his upside is quite as high as Gabe Perreault. And I'm a big Brett Berard fan. I think for sure, look, if you want to call him up too, you want to stick him into a middle 6 role, maybe on the third line there, I'm not going to fight you. You don't have to twist my arm to get me to go along with that plan. But in terms of like just true bona fide upside, somebody that can come in and really spark this team, really give them a lift, a boost when it comes to offense, a boost when it comes to goals, it's Gabe Perreault. And I don't even know who else it would be on the Hartford Wolfpack that you can say that about, at least not at this moment right now. And on top of everything I just mentioned, the Rangers are basically out of excuses for any kind of a reason not to call up Gabe Perreault. We just talked about how he's been dominating the AHL through his first 9 games there. We see how much the Rangers are struggling offensively. And honestly, not just at home. A lot of us, myself included, we all kind of fixate on how putrid the Rangers have been offensively at home. And they've been better on the road. I mean, there's no doubt about that. They've been better basically in every aspect of hockey on the road. Just one of those bizarre early season trends here. But even when you lump everything together, all the offensive numbers together, you're still talking about a team here that in 16 games has scored only 35 goals. So barely 2 goals per game. And again, I realize those awful numbers at home weigh everything down, and they've been a lot better on the road. But still, when you group everything together, it's a team that is obviously struggling for goals. So with that being the case, I mean, Gabe can help them at home. He can help them on the road. And I think also this is a nice landing spot for somebody like Gabe Perreault. And again, I realize he played 5 games at the end of last season, but the Rangers are at home against the Predators, who are not very good at all. And it's not like this is a fierce, like a high intensity division rivalry here. I mean, you never know what can spark the powder keg, so to speak, between 2 random NHL teams, an Eastern Conference team against a Western Conference team. But this seems like a pretty solid spot for Gabe Perreault to make his debut. He's your best chance for more offense. He's your best chance for a spark of some kind. Just ignite a little bit more life, a little youthful exuberance into this Ranger lineup. The time has come. Giving a team a spark, that's something that is something of an overused sports cliche. But, I mean, you look at this last game against the Islanders, you lose 5-0. The team looks dead in the water after what I thought was a very encouraging start to this game. The team looked dead in the water after they gave up that first goal to the Islanders. They basically got worse and worse with every passing minute the rest of the game. So, again, Gabe Perreault, you've got nothing to lose. I mean, I know ideally maybe you have him develop a little bit more in the AHL, but this team's got to do something. Every game is big. It's still early in the season, but these games early in the season count just as much as the ones late in the season. And if you believe, as I do, that the Rangers are going to end up being sort of a bubble playoff team this season, then I don't think there's any time to wait around. If the Rangers had started the season on fire and they were like 10-2-1 right now, don't laugh too much. But if they were like 10-2-1 right now, then yeah, I don't think there's any real urgency to call up Gabe, but that's not what's going on. The Rangers they're up and they're down. They're great on the road. They're bad at home. It's time to, go for it here and make an aggressive move. And I give the Rangers props for doing this maybe a little bit earlier than they would have liked, but it's a move that needed to be made. They've made it. And now let's see how it goes with Gabe Perreault, assuming we're going to see him in the lineup in this game here tonight. But in just a minute, we're going to keep everything going with this Gabe Perreault talk. We're going to talk about the best way to use Gabe Perreault in his season debut and beyond, and why I think it's a smart move to put him out there on a line with Artemi Panarin. We will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by DripDrop. When you're hydrated, everything just works better. Your focus, your energy, your mood, even your skin. That's why there's DripDrop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps you running at full power no matter what your day looks like. DripDrop is not your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands, using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. Hydration has become non-negotiable for all of us. DripDrop helps you feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off of their first order. Go to DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard, and keep your body and your mind performing at their best with DripDrop. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast through all the ups and downs of Ranger hockey. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. For the everydayers, we're going to be back maybe later tonight. It's Monday morning as I'm recording this, and the Rangers are going to be in action at home. Oh boy, at home against the Nashville Predators, looking for, at long last, their first home win of the season. Puck drops at 7 o'clock for that. Predators are third to last in the Western Conference with a record of 5-8-4. And just like watching some highlights and listening to some of these guys talk after games, they just seem like a broken, defeated team. I know some people will say that about the Rangers, and there's times where the Rangers can give off that perception. I mean, the Predators team, man, it's just sad hearing some of the things that some of these guys are saying. They're also 1-3-2 on the road. So can the Rangers please get a win tonight? I mean, you got to win this one, right? You're beyond due for a home win, and you're playing a bad team that's even worse on the road. Win the game. Win the game. So let's keep everything going with Gabe Perreault here. And the best way, or some of the best ways that I think they can use him now that he has been called back up to the NHL. For starters, put him in the top 6, first and foremost. You can maybe get away with putting him on the third line. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But I say this is your top prospect far and away, the guy with the highest ceiling, the highest upside, the most superstar potential out of any prospect that you've got. Whether it's guys playing in Hartford or playing in college or junior leagues, whatever it might be, this is the guy. This is the guy that you should have the highest expectations for, and he's now been called up. So put him in a position to succeed. Put him in a spot in the lineup that immediately sends the message to Gabe himself that we believe in you. Come in here and do your thing. Be the hockey player that we all expected you to be when we drafted you. So put him in the top 6, first and foremost. Beyond that, put him with Artemi Panarin. There's a lot of reasons for this, but we're going to begin with something that we've called the Panarin bump over the years on Locked On New York Rangers. Basically, this is a fancy term that we came up with to illustrate the fact that anybody that plays on a line with Artemi Panarin will see an uptick in their overall play, their offensive production, their points, their scoring chances, probably their confidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen this with countless players from, Ryan Strome. I think he's probably the best example. Far more productive with the Rangers than he ever was before coming to the Rangers or after leaving with the Rangers. Also, you've got Jesper Fast. I mean, he, added more offense to his game with Panarin. Andrew Kopp for half the season. Vincent Trocheck a couple seasons ago had a career year for the Rangers. Alexis Lafreniere sort of for a season there and a little bit of change, and then he signed his new contract. And bottom line, there's probably more than just the ones that I'm mentioning, but all these players received the Panarin bump, and I would like to see if Gabe Perreault, the same thing can happen to him. Again, your first round draft selection, the guy with the highest upside of any prospect in your organization, put him in position to succeed, and one of the best ways to do that is to have him out there with Artemi Panarin. Now, the one drawback of putting the two of them together, and some of you might already be thinking this, is that there does seem to be maybe a little bit of redundancy in the respected style, the respected games of Artemi Panarin and Gabe Perreault. I mean, they're both playmakers. They're both pass-first guys. They both are set. I mean, we know this about Panarin, but this is also the book on Gabe Perreault as well, that they see the ice very well. Just tremendous vision out there, tremendous hockey instincts, and obviously outstanding passers on top of all that. So there's a lot of similarities there, right? And sometimes you maybe want to put two guys like that on different lines, and they can both kind of play that facilitator role on different lines. Maybe Panarin on the top line and Gabe on the second line. That's certainly a road that you can go down if you choose to go that way. But bottom line, based on everything we just said, the Panarin bump, I just got to see if that's going to work. And I'd be curious to know what you guys would think about this. If you'd like, certainly leave your ideal line combinations in the comment section for YouTube, or email it to me. Do whatever you got to do. But I would just like to see it right out of the gates here, if it's possible for Gabe Perreault to benefit from playing with Panarin the way that we've seen so many other, frankly, less talented players benefit from playing with Panarin in the past. And you know what? Two-way street. Maybe Panarin is even reinvigorated a little bit by playing with the kid, playing with the young guy. Panarin's had a very strange start to this season. He's basically got two monster performances. He went off for 4 points in that awesome comeback that the Rangers had in Montreal against the Canadiens. And then in the second most recent game, right after his haircut, he had 3 points against Detroit. He had a hand in all 3 of the Rangers' first 3 goals of that game. Otherwise, a very quiet start for Panarin. But again, playing with this young kid who's going to come in, obviously has tremendous talent. Maybe that can get Panarin going a little bit. Maybe that kind of I don't want to say like breathes new life into him, because I mean, it's Panarin and you know he's eventually going to get his points. But I think there is something to be said for that could be like a fun opportunity for Artemi Panarin. And there's precedence for this as well. A couple of years ago, Vitaly Kravtsov. He's had all this drama with the Rangers, all this drama with Chris Drury. He goes back to the KHL. He does all these things. He eventually comes back to the Rangers. And for a while there, they gave it a little bit of a go. They had Kravtsov on the same line as Artemi Panarin, and Panarin kind of took Kravtsov under his wing a little bit. The two of them were staying out there, after practice and working on a couple of things. Panarin was setting him up for some shots, just passing across the ice there. But bottom line, Panarin really put in the work with Vitaly Kravtsov. Now, Kravtsov, for a lot of different reasons, probably a lost cause at that point. It just was never really going to click with him and the Rangers, but Panarin at least tried, and that's what leaders should do. And he does wear a letter, and it's nice to see that. So if Panarin can put in that much work with somebody like Kravtsov, with all the drama that there was behind the scenes with Kravtsov with the Rangers, I would like to think that he would be willing and able to do the same thing with Gabe Perreault. Somebody who, I mean, at least on the surface of things, looks like a far, far better first-round draft selection than was Vitaly Kravtsov. So you'd like to think that, Panarin, again, would embrace that challenge and do everything he can to help Gabe Perreault, particularly if the two of them end up on the same line, as I hope that they do and as I think that they should out of the starting blocks here. You can always adjust as time goes on, and maybe guys have to move up and down the lineup, but I like the idea of the two of them being together to start this run for Gabe Perreault now that he's back up with the NHL. Now, as far as line combinations go, altogether, because there is a ripple effect here, right? You put somebody like Gabe Perreault into the lineup, different pieces have to move around and somebody gets squeezed out of the lineup. This is what I would do for line combinations for tonight against the Predators. And this is assuming that Vincent Trocheck is not yet ready, is not going to be in the lineup tonight. And as of this recording on Monday morning, I have not seen anything to the contrary to suggest that Trocheck will play tonight. Doesn't mean that he won't, but I just haven't seen anything that would suggest that he will. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go with a top line. We'll call this the top line. Will Cooley, Mika Zibanejad, and Alexis Lafreniere. I like the idea of having a hard-nosed player on each line, and we're going to see that with JT Miller on the next line. But you put the hard-nosed Will Cooley with Mika Zibanejad and Alexis Lafreniere. I've been saying this and saying this and saying this. I do feel like there's a sneaky good chemistry between Mika and Lafreniere, and I'd like to see them get a little bit of run together at some point. I mean, it never really seems to last. There's times where they're on the same line, but it never really lasts all that long. So that's your top line. The second line will go left to right: Panarin, JT Miller, Gabe Perreault. Again, you got the hard-nosed player in JT Miller. You've got, again, there's some redundancy between Panarin and Gabe Perreault, but I got to have the two of them together. I got to see if Gabe Perreault can benefit from that Panarin bunch. So that'll be the second line. The third line, we're going left to right: Sheary, Laba, and Brodzinski. These three together were outstanding in the game against Detroit. And then, some changes were made, and you had Radish and Sheary flip-flopping spots in the last game. Sheary took a bad penalty, got promoted to the top line. But this line clicked, and maybe part of the reason for that, and why Sheary seems like he can do a decent job on the third line, but certainly not in the top six, is because mostly there's going to be more favorable matchups for that line. You'll be going up against another team's third line, not for the entire night, but for a decent portion of the night. So for that reason, I would like to see these three together. I'd like to see a little bit of an encore of the outstanding performance that they had against Detroit. And then the fourth line, Parson, Carrick, and Radish from left to right. If Edstrom's healthy, then give me him in the lineup over Parson, but that's your fourth line. Getting back to Gabe specifically, I know there's going to be a lot of people that want to see him just thrown, lead the team in ice time. And I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. I mean, I'm very bullish on Gabe Perreault, and I do like the idea of him just, getting out there and getting as many chances as possible. I know some people are going to be clamoring for Gabe to join the top power play unit, and there is something of a case to be made there, especially when you consider how badly this unit has struggled to start the season. We can hold off on him playing on the top power play. I'm somewhat reasonable when it comes to things like this, but definitely have him on the second power play. The reason I would hold off on the top power play, we did see Will Cooley score a power play goal about 20 seconds into his first shift on the top power play a couple of games ago against Detroit. And I think they like Cooley as a net front presence. As bad as this most recent game was against the Islanders, there were a couple of spots on the power play where Cooley had a decent chance to score. And I'd like to keep him there in that role. Again, that net front presence role that this team is going to try to fill now that obviously Chris Kreider is no longer here. So you keep Cooley there. Beyond that, I mean, you're just not going to demote any of these guys to make room for Gabe Perreault, who's making his season debut and has only played 5 career NHL games. Adam Fox needs to be there. We know that. They're not going to take Panarin off of the top power play to make room for Gabe Perreault. They're not going to move the captain off of the top power play to make room for Gabe Perreault. And Mika Zibanejad, same thing. I mean, these are guys that obviously have established themselves and have had a lot of success on the power play in the past. It's just not going to happen right now. I'd be very, very surprised if we see Gabe on the top power play. But he could be on the second power play, presumably with Lafreniere, Schneider, and I guess Radish and Sheary. I mean, does that sound about right? Brodzinski could take the spot of Radish and Sheary if you want to try that. But I think that's probably the best spot for Gabe Perreault right now. I'll also say this. This is something else that the Rangers must do to have Gabe Perreault succeed right away. Give him minutes. I don't want to see the Rangers like pull him off the ice because there's a close game in the third period, especially if he's playing well up to that point. You know, we've seen this in the past. Certain Ranger players, if they're young, they're inexperienced, coaches kind of defer to the veterans. Every coach in the NHL does this. Drives you crazy. But they always defer to the veterans in spots like this. So if the Rangers if they're in a spot where there's like 10 minutes to go and it's a tie game, or the Rangers are up by a goal, the Rangers are down by a goal, I don't want to see them pull Gabe Perreault off the ice because he's up here for a reason. He's obviously tremendously talented. You're trying to give your team a spark, and the best way for Gabe Perreault to learn is to do it on the fly and have him out there in all different situations in the game. The one exception I'll make here, if the Rangers are up by a goal and we get to like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe even 4 minutes to go, and you don't want to give him a shift in that spot because, you don't feel like that's the best player to use in that situation because you're trying to protect the lead, I can at least understand that. If you want to have his last shift with about 4 minutes to go and then 3 minutes or less with a 1-goal lead, have him not on the ice, that's okay. I can live with that. But for the most part, he needs to be out there. He needs to be playing and, again, learning on the fly and being instilled with some confidence that we called you up for a reason, we believe in you, and we're going to play you in every situation in the game. I mean, this to me seems like common sense stuff, but we are talking about the Rangers here. So let me know what you think about that as well. But in just a minute, we're going to conclude today's episode by talking a little bit about what the Rangers absolutely cannot, must not, should not, and hopefully will not do with Gabe Perreault. There are a couple of cardinal sins that they could potentially commit, and we're going to go through that checklist in just a second and basically let them know that they better not do it. So we'll do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by going through, I mean, we've kind of already gone through the do's with Gabe Perreault. These are going to be the do-nots with Gabe Perreault. These are things that the Rangers cannot, should not, and hopefully will not do. First of all, let's get this one out of the way real quick here because this will drive me insane. This might be the thing that the Rangers do that finally breaks all of us as fans. Do not make him a healthy scratch for this game against the Predators tonight. I don't know at this point. None of us can say for sure that we know how Gabe Perreault's career is going to go. I don't know how Gabe Perreault's career is going to go. You don't know how Gabe Perreault's career is going to go. Certainly, we're all hopeful. But one thing that I know for sure is that Gabe Perreault's career is not going to be significantly better if the Rangers make him a healthy scratch in this game here tonight. Gabe Perreault watching this game from the press box and seeing his teammates get shut out again is not going to do anything positive for his career. Now, granted, I don't think it'll do anything negative for his career either. Like, I don't think it would ruin his career if they made him a healthy scratch tonight, but that's just the point. It's not going to affect it one way or another. It's not going to make any impact, positive or negative, on Gabe Perreault if he's a healthy scratch. So why scratch him at all? Clearly, you called him up for a reason. And with that being the case, just throw him right into the lineup. And again, preferably in a top 6 role. But there's no reason for Gabe Perreault to be eased into everything and watch the game from the press box. I'm not having that tonight. None of you should be having that tonight either. You call him up, you play him. Simple as that. Now, we have seen the Rangers do this with some other players that they have called up over the last little bit of recent history here. And this is part of the reason why I brought it up as it pertains to Gabe. But we've seen them do it with somebody like Yaroslav Smolarz. He was a healthy scratch his first game that he was called up. Then he played in the 2 games, and he's since been sent down. We saw them do it with Scott Morrow. Scott Morrow was called up for like 2 or 3 games earlier this year, and he never got into an actual game for the Rangers before he was sent back down to the Wolfpack. And even Brandon Hoffman, I mean, they sort of did it in the opposite order of Brandon Hoffman. They called him up, they played him in a game, and they healthy scratched him for 3 games, and then they sent him back down to the Hartford Wolfpack. But the reason why in those cases it's a little bit more forgivable is because none of those players are Gabe Perreault. None of them have the immense upside that Gabe Perreault has. For a while, maybe we thought that Hoffman did, but I think all of us at best are starting to question that. So with that being the case, you don't treat this guy like he's some random veteran NHL journeyman. You don't treat him like he's some guy that you took in the 6th round and he's just up to be a warm body. No, this is your guy here. This is somebody that is massively important to I was going to say the future of Ranger hockey. Honestly, the short-term and the long-term future of Ranger hockey, because we just got done talking about how badly this team needs to spark. So you call him up, put him in the lineup, end of story. One other thing that the Rangers cannot do as it pertains to Gabe Perreault, play him in the bottom 6. We're going to do this one line at a time. We'll start with the 4th line, and we'll work our way to the 3rd line. So the 4th line, I don't think there's any world where he starts on the 4th line tonight. I put nothing past the Rangers, and I'm sure a lot of you are right in that same boat with me. Never say never, but they would need a CAT scan if they put Gabe Perreault in the bottom the 4th line. And for the reason for that is because there is nothing. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that there is nothing about Gabe Perreault's game that screams 4th line. With guys like Brandon Hoffman, with guys like Brett Berard, when you call them up, even with them, I would not put them on the 4th line, but there's at least a case to be made like, well, they play a physical game and, maybe they're not all the way there yet offensively. So 4th line is okay. We'll ease them in. We'll put them on the 4th line. We'll limit their minutes and they can work their way up in due time. There's at least a case to be made for Hoffman and Berard. Again, it's not what I would do, but there's a case to be made. With Gabe Perreault, there's no case whatsoever. There is nothing about this kid's game that says that he should be out there playing on the 4th line. You call him up, put him in position to succeed. Gabe Perreault, you want him to hit the ground running. You want him to have a great start, and trying to make him into a 4th line grinder on his first, appearance in the NHL this season, that's not the way to go. So hopefully the Rangers recognize that as well. I think they do. What feels a lot more possible to me, though, and potentially even likely, is the Rangers starting Gabe Perreault on the 3rd line. Now, this would at least not be the end of the world, but are we really doing this? Are we really going to put guys like Taylor Radish and Connor Sheary into the top 6 in favor of somebody like Gabe Perreault? Radish and Sheary are here to fill out the lineup at an inexpensive cost. Let's just be honest. Let's just call it what it like it is. That's what they're here to do. They're not here because we suddenly think that they're going to become like phenomenal offensive players. Connor Sheary is 33 years old. Taylor Radish is, I think, in his late 20s. He's like 28 or 29. There's no reason to believe that the two of them are going to be like point per game players. If one of the 3 of Radish, Sheary, and Gabe Perreault comes in and makes an immediate impact and has an awesome offensive season and leads this kind of revitalization of the Rangers here, their stagnant offensive attack right now, it's going to be Gabe Perreault over one of the other 2. I think that's fair to say at this point. So for me, especially don't put him on the 4th line. I think we're safe there. I don't think the Rangers will do that. But also, don't even put him on the 3rd line. Start him in the top 6. Treat him the way that a top prospect should be treated. Another thing the Rangers cannot do, and we'll end on this one, they cannot send Gabe Perreault back down to the Hartford Wolfpack once Vincent Trocheck is healthy. I don't want to see Gabe up here for 1 or 2 games, and then Trocheck gets healthy, and he comes back in the lineup, and the Rangers say, okay, we're fine now. Trocheck's back. We don't need Gabe Perreault anymore, and we're too afraid to, waive anybody, or we're too afraid to make one of these veterans a healthy scratch. That's a bunch of nonsense. If you call up Gabe Perreault, it should be with the idea at this point where the Rangers are in the season, how much they've struggled offensively. It should be with the idea of giving him a lot of leash, a lot of rope, and letting him feel his way out in the NHL and hopefully give this team a spark that it so desperately needs. I really hope that that's not the Rangers' plan right now, that we'll just call him up for a couple of games, and then once Trocheck is back, we'll send him back down. Have both of them. I mean, imagine how much better this lineup could at least look and potentially be if you add Vincent Trocheck and Gabe Perreault to it. Trocheck, I mean, we know what we're going to get. He's a solid player. He does a lot of different things to help the Rangers win. He's somebody that's been very important to this Ranger team over the handful of seasons that he's been here, and somebody that a lot of Ranger, fans wanted to see named the next captain. He's a very popular player of this team. He's somebody that I think will help the vibes when he's back, but Gabe Perreault can help this team too, and it shouldn't have to be one or the other. Once Trocheck is back and once Gabe Perreault is in this lineup, all of a sudden, it looks like this team has a little bit more depth. It looks like this team has a little bit more offensive firepower. It looks like they're just a better team, period. All of a sudden it won't look as miserable as it does right now with certain players, playing in the top 6 that frankly just probably shouldn't be there. And it's nothing against those players. It's just the reality of the situation. So he needs to stay in the NHL. Does Gabe Perreault, and Trocheck coming back should not be something that, forces him back to the AHL. So we'll call it there. There's one other thing I want to mention here. Quick announcement. Going to be on vacation for a week beginning this upcoming Friday until the following Saturday. So we're going to miss some games. We're going to miss some episodes, but we will actually have a couple of featurey evergreen episodes that are going to auto-publish while I'm gone. A couple of them take a look at Chris Drury and his performance as Ranger GM, and there's going to be a mailbag in there as well. So I believe there's going to be 3 episodes for next week that will drop at various times. And then once I come back, we'll hit the ground running like we always do. We'll talk about everything going on with the Rangers, and hopefully they're playing some good hockey. And if you haven't subscribed to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel, you should probably do that. I do post a lot of short videos on there pretty much every day. And even on vacation, I'll add a quick 1-minute video, hopefully every day, just to kind of talk about everything going on with the Rangers and just share some casual thoughts there. So, yep, we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.